Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We're continuing the Hachaim Hakadosh. We're on Parshat Balak, Perek Chav Gimel, Pasuk Zayin. As this week will be the Yartzeit of the Hachaim Hakadosh, Abaleinu L'Toiva, Tezvav Tammuz, I feel that it's important just to focus a little bit on the Torah of the Hachaim Hakadosh. In the past, we've discussed different stories, biography, historical backgrounds. The Hachaim came from Morocco. He went to Italy for a time period. Eventually, he ended up in Yerushalayim. One of the famous Talmidim and students that he has, as we know, was the Chidah. A lot of what we know comes from the Chidah and from other tzaddikim from that time. The Hachaim Hakadosh is one of the Svarim that is learned and accepted by all different backgrounds of Klal Yisrael, all different halakim. Whether it's the Hasidish Olam, the Baal Shem Tov held very much of the Hachaim Hakadosh, other Hasidim, Hasidish Rebbes, or Hasidish tzaddikim, all were very involved in the learning of Hachaim Hakadosh, of Pinchas Mekaritza, the original. The Litvishe also learned the Hachaim Hakadosh, the famous story with the niece of the Chazon Ish. The Chazon Ish was very involved in making her shidduch. She did not have children for many years. She came to her Chazon Ish, and the Chazon Ish, after a whole back and forth, said the only person that can help you have children, and she didn't have children for many years, you have to go to an Adam Gadol. So she asked, who's an Adam Gadol? He said, the Hachaim Hakadosh, go to his caver and daven there. She davened by the caver, and about a year later she had a child. So the Chazon Ish understood that the Hachaim Hakadosh, not that he needs our haskama obviously, but the Chazon Ish also, who was Kuloi Torah, held the Hachaim Hakadosh to be an Adam Gadol. And obviously, of course, the Sfardish Kehillah, where the Hachaim comes from, was very, very, very involved in the learning. The Baba Sali would learn every Friday, every Erev Shabbos. He would learn the Parsha of the week, as they say, cover to cover. Obviously, the Baba Sali, being from Morocco, had the Mesorah to continue the learning of the Hachaim Hakadosh, but from all tfutzos of Sard, of whether it was from Iraq, Iran, Syria, Lebanon, Egypt, Italy, everybody learns from the Hachaim Hakadosh. And the lessons that we learn from the Hachaim Hakadosh are timeless. Right? We, Baruch Hashem, learned through different parts of the Hachaim Hakadosh over the last few years. And we know that there are fundamental ideas that the Hachaim gives over to us. Whether it's in learning, whether it's in Kedusha, Tahara, Avodas Hashem, they're classic pieces, and there's a lot to learn. And every time you learn, you're gaining a little nugget. You gain a little bit more insight, another chiddush. Obviously, the broader picture you have, the more you see how every Hachaim was written b'diktuk, b'ruach hakodesh, b'siyata d'shmaya, al pi dvar Hashem. So with that introduction, just to be machazek ourselves, especially as we're coming close to the Yartzeit, according to most accounts, the Hachaim did not have any children. Some say he had a daughter. It's unclear. But either way, tzaddikim said, it's brought down from different tzaddikim, the Imre Yosef Espinka, I believe it was the Lev Simcha, said that learning the Hachaim Hakadosh, as he did not have any children, he was infused, the koiches, his neshama infused into the words, the ability to have children. I heard from one individual that they had a problem with their eyesight, and they took upon themselves to learn the Hachaim Hakadosh, being it or light, a Chaim of life, and after a few months his eyesight started to return. So again, obviously there are many different stories of many different people. The Iker is the learning, the Iker is the chashivus of the learning, and the importance of the fundamentals that the Hachaim teaches us, as we're going to see in the following piece, as an idea for us to refocus and to re-strengthen our learning in the Hachaim Hakadosh. And the schusi should be a male tziyasha for us. So the pasuk says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu told Bilam, go back to Balak, and this is what you should say. So the pasuk, Perek of Gimel and Balak, pasuk Vav says, Vayoshav Elov, v'hinei nitzav ala lasai. Bilam went back to Balak, and he saw that Balak was standing on the burnt karbanis. Who v'chol sari Moab, him, Balak, and all the ministers of Moab. Now, Bilam went and said a mashal. We're going to see what that mashal is. And he said, Min Aram yancheni Balak. From Aram, Balak took me, Melech Moav, Maharei Kedem, from the mountains of the east, L'cha Orli Yaakov. He asked me, the Bilam is saying that Balak asked me to curse Yaakov, L'cha Zoyama Yisrael, and bring anger to Yisrael. So Hachaim obviously is going to focus who's Yaakov, who's Yisrael referring to, right? If it's Klal Yisrael, just why sometimes does he mention Yaakov and sometimes does he mention Yisrael? This is the famous pasuk that Bilam says, I can't curse Hashem, if I can't curse Klal Yisrael, said Bilam, if Hakadosh Baruch Hu didn't curse them. And I can't get Hashem angry if Hashem is not angry. A very interesting line that Bilam says. He says, from the origins, as the art school translated, which means from the beginning of the tzurim, of its rocks, erenu, I see, umigavais asherenu, and from the hills, I see it. Hein levadad yishkain, they are a nation that sits by themselves, uvagoyim lo yischashav, and they are not to be counted among the other nations. So Hachaim is going to focus primarily on this pasuk. What is Bilam referring to? Who is Bilam referring to when he says this line, Kimi Rosh Tzurem Arenu? Right, it's a song Hayakar Shwaki sings. But this is a very important idea that our Hachaim is going to teach us. So we begin Shuv Vayiso Mishalai. Pirush Kishirosh Shaloi Tziva Hashem Shaloi Lidaber. Bilam saw that Hashem did not command him not to speak. Gam Loi Omer Loi Hadvar Mishiyamar. He also did not say what he should say. Chishev. So Bilam now thought Shenit Loi L'Rishus, that he was given permission to say whatever he wanted. This is why he said a parable, Mishaloi, from his own. It's like a little bit of a play on the word. Mashaloi is a parable, Mishaloi from his own ideas. Explaining that he wanted to say things that he wanted. However, his mouth sort of became crooked. It was forced to say other things. That's why it says in the pasuk, Vayoymar, which is like a language of force. He said something else that he did not really want to say. The psukim that we mentioned, Bilam did not want to say. As if you go a little bit further in the psukim, you see that Balak became very angry with Bilam. Why are you blessing Klal Yisrael? He had a mashal that he wanted to say, but he put it away. Instead, he said something else. So not that Hakadosh Baruch Hu forced him to say something else. Rather, he prepared to curse Klal Yisrael, but for some reason, on his own accord, he pulled it back and said a bracha. Min aram, a very interesting thing that Bilam says. Bilam says, I was ram. Min aram, from ram I was. Min haramim hayisi, I was from the top, the most important people. And Bilam says, Balak brought me down to the depths of destruction. Now, Bilam, on the one hand, really brought it upon himself, right? He himself agreed to go with Bilam. With Balak, he didn't have to. He could have stayed home. But he wanted to, but instead of taking responsibility for his own actions, he went and he blamed it on Bilam, on Balak. Atkan, he became upset, and he sort of like was crying that he now became like a joke. Everybody looked at him like a joke. Oh, here was this Bilam, this great prophet, this person that Hashem gave him tremendous koiches, and he became a joke. He became Kaviyachol, Balak's servant, and ended up, he knew, Bilam at this point already knew that he was finished. And he was upset. And that's why he was saying, Min Aram, I was from Aram. Shahiyah min Haramim, v'yorek kvoita. There are different levels of nevuah. So this is an idea that the Hachaim mentions a few times, that there are neviim that are on a lower level, that they cannot get a full blast of prophecy. Meaning to say, for them to get a full, clear blast of prophecy will overwhelm their senses, overwhelm their neshama. So Hashem has to be mitzamtzem, so to speak, has to minimize and compact in a less of a stream the nevuah that he's sending to this prophet. That it comes to the Navi derech mishalom. It's not a clear prophecy. It's not a clear vision. It's not a clear message. The Navi sort of has to try to figure out what is the message that Hashem is sending. She slapshu b'divim l'shon kifi asher yuchal seis, according to the level that individual can understand. Right? If you go to a person, start explaining to them deep concepts, kavayachol lahavdil, in chemistry, in nuclear physics, in mathematics, their head will explode. You have to you have to tame it down a little bit. You have to say, okay, let's take it step by step. I'll give you a mashal. I'll give you an example, a story. If you start coming them with full depths of physics and engineering and biochemistry, their heads literally won't be able to handle it. So lahavdil, here too, if there are certain Nevi'im that cannot handle the normal stream of Nevuah, and he has to bring it down. This is also for people from Klal Yisrael. That's why Bilam needed a mashal for his Nevuah, because he would not have been able to get a clear prophecy from Hashem, even though he was in a high level, still, because he was still trapped in Tumah, and he was associated with Tumah, he cannot get that full level. Now we're going to come to the two famous psukim, the Cha'arli Yaakov. That Balak tells Bilam, come and curse me Yaakov. Who's Yaakov? Who's Yisrael? Pirush. There's two classes, two levels in Klal Yisrael. Geder tzadikim, v'geder abeinanim. There's tzadikim and abeinanim. Now notice, the Hachaim doesn't say there's Rashaim, because the Hachaim says there's no Rashaim in Klal Yisrael. There's beinanim and tzadikim. Ukevar kasavna l'mala. We already learned before. Pirush shlichus Balak she'amar nake boy v'agrushena. That when Balak told Bilam, let's hit them and we will drive them out, is le'echad mi'adrachim. Sheneskaven keneged ha'beinanim nakaboy. That Balak had in mind to the beinanim that we will be able to overcome them, we will hit them. They won't have the schus to protect themselves. Or keneged tzadikim, omar v'agrashenu. The tzadikim we can't hit, but at least we can chase them away. Ki yadu ha'yel lehem haflogas ma'alas tzadikim. Balak understood somehow that tzaddikim are on such a level that Hashem protects them that they would not be able to attack them. You see that these individuals, Balak and Bilam, were not foolish. Like we learned even by Parshat, there are things that they knew. They knew that they were tremendous and they had unbelievable powers of Tumah, but the powers of Tumah, as we see in the Gemara by Rabbi Chanina ben Doisa, could not affect tzaddikim. So they didn't try to say, let's hit with the Tumah the tzaddikim. Rather, they said, we'll drive them away. That's what the reference over here, early Yaakov, curse Yaakov, Hema Beinanim. Lashanarira, Zoyamo Yisrael, Hema Tzaddikim HaMiskan in Yisrael. When it says we will get Hashem angry to Yisrael, it refers to the tzaddikim. Z'ima angry is less than cursing and hitting, right? When a person is angry, okay, he can control himself. He won't still hit somebody. When a person hits somebody, that's a lot worse than somebody being angry at you. Even though in some cases it is better because after the individual hits the person, his anger subsides. But anger shows, I'm angry at you, leave, but I'm not going to do anything to you. So ma'ekov lakabekel. Bilam says, how could I curse Klal Yisrael if Hashem did not curse them? How could I get Hashem angry if Hashem is not angry? Now this comes to a famous question that's brought down. Kosher. Im Hashem kilul lezeh. What did Bilam say? I can't curse Hashem if Hashem cursed them. Well, it says the Hachaim Parshat, if Hashem cursed them, chas v'shalom, Hashem doesn't need you to curse them as well. Ma mokum lekal Bilam. Right? Likewise, ki im zoam bar Hashem, if chas v'shalom Hashem was angry, ma tzorich v'zimas Bilam. What does Bilam need to get Hashem angry? The Hachaim says an unbelievable thing. The reason by Balak hired Bilam was because Hashem was not angry at Klal Yisrael. Which is a fascinating thing. After all the parashas that we learned, the Meraglim, the Lashon Hara, right? Last week's parasha, the snakes, Hashem was not angry at Klal Yisrael. Hashem forgave them. Right? There was no punishments, there was no curse, there was no anger. So, if that's the case, says the Hachaim, Mimal Mishach. If Hashem is not angry at them, how are you going to get Hashem angry at them? And if Hashem is angry at them, that Balak doesn't need you. What does it mean in the pasuk? Kimi roish tzurim, from the roish of the mountains. Le maimer ma'ekov. What is? I can't curse Klal Yisrael, and I looked at the tops of the mountains. Now over here, kimi roish means the beginning. right? Even though Onkelos translate as Meiresh, the art scroll translated as the origins, which means I looked at the original place where the rock came from. So who's this referring to, says Dar Chaim? Now, as we mentioned in the Hagdama, we're going to learn an unbelievable fundamental idea, which is very important for us to know when it comes to Chas V'Shalom, a person doing an Aveira, and then Mitzvah Hashem doing Tshuva. Let's understand something very simple, says Dar Chaim. If a person did an Aveira, and min adin is chayiv to get punished, then the klala wouldn't make a difference. If a person did an Aveira and he was judged to get punished, even if he's not cursed by somebody, he'll still get punished. The curse is not maila or moira the situation. And if, therefore, if according to Hashem's mishpat, Reuven, for example, did not do anything wrong, the klala will boomerang back to the person who does the klala. So the Hachaim says a very interesting thing. I don't understand. What is the curse going to do to a person that was not judged to get punished? And if the person was judged to get punished, the curse is not going to do anything more or less than already would have been punished. Now the Hachaim says a very interesting idea. A person is going through a matzav, he goes to a tzaddik and he gets a bracha. And the bracha affects. So the Hachaim is implying the following question. I don't understand, says the Hachaim. He doesn't say it directly, but we'll see that this is what he means. And this is just for us to understand. If Hakadosh Baruch Hu judged Reuven to get punished, how is the bracha going to help him? Right? That's the famous question also. How does Tila work? Okay. So Bishlam HaBracha, says the Hachaim, Lefishim Midah Meruba, that the midah of a bracha, the midah of goodness is much greater. That even someone who's not worthy of a bracha might get the benefit of it anyways. Gam, also, there's a secondary effect over here. Now, this is very important for us to understand. When a tzaddik gives us a bracha, Hashem wants to make the tzaddik happy. Gam lasis Hashem ratzon yedidav levarach hamizbach mehem. He wants to help the tzaddik by giving the person that he gives a bracha, which means Hashem wants to make the tzaddik happy. So when the tzaddik gives somebody a bracha, so obviously the tzaddik is happy when the bracha is effectual, right, on the person. Not that the tzaddik cares for himself. He's happy for the other person. So Hashem wants to do his ratzon. Hashem wants to make the tzaddik happy. B'midas hachesed, tekuba brachasa gam lemisha einoi royal loy k'may masav. And based on the midas hachesed, where Hashem does chesed with somebody, right, even to somebody who doesn't deserve it, Memela, that's why a bracha works even on a person that does not deserve it. Masha enkein midara, Hakadosh Baruch Hu works much differently. Hashem does not punish a person unless it's 100% exact. If for some reason somebody in the individual's surroundings it does not deserve to be connected to the tzar of this individual, Hashem will not punish this individual. Memela, therefore, when it comes to cursing somebody who does not deserve to be cursed, a curse won't help. So what's Bilam trying to do? And therefore, Ikra Davu Lefi Shemidasai Yizbarach Laharach Apel Oiritzane. Our Chaim teaches a very important yesod. That when a person does an Aveira, Hashem doesn't punish him right away. Hashem has Erech HaPayim. Ben Latzadik Kishiyachta, whether Tzadik does an Aveira, Ben HaRosha Hagam Shiyitzalachta. Even a Rasha that Hashem knows he wants to do an Aveira, Hashem doesn't stop him. This is one of the 13 midas of Rachman that Hashem told Moshe. Zulas pe'es asher yizam Hashem. Hachaim says a very important thing. Hakadosh Baruch Hu is always arach his af. He always waits to punish a person. However, there are moments, for whatever reason that's only known to Hashem, that Hashem gets angry. And when Hashem gets angry, Hashem says, okay, now it's time that I have to punish everybody. I remember many years ago, there was, I don't remember the exact background, but there was unfortunately many tzaras in Klal Yisrael. And I remember that I asked a Rav, a big tzaddik, and I said, how does a person protect himself from this situation? So he told me two things, and the second thing was very scary. He said, obviously you have to do learn more Torah, Avodah, Gemilas Chasadim, Tshuva. And the second thing, he said, really, if you're not in the room protected, you're almost lost. He told me that there are certain times when Hashem brings din on the world. If you are not in an area that's protected, you're going to get caught up. And you always have to put yourself in a situation that you're kaviyachol protected. How you protected, connected tzaddikim, learning Torah, Gemilas Chasadim. But if you're not protected, then you sort of don't have siyach d'shmaya, you're in big trouble. And here too, when Hakadosh Baruch Hu gets angry, ki rega be'apa, it says, oz misgabrim hadinim ala nitba b'mishpat v'yisazman. The loitis nag midah zu shel Hachaim, and no longer is there the midah of Hashem is not going to get angry so fast. So too, what happens is, kishi kalal odem es chaverim, when a person curses his friend, tisoyviv haklolo shavanoisav shayimarach le'apa yalei mimali parimena. The curse causes Hashem to punish the person a lot faster than he should have been. Because a curse, right, reawakens the dinim, makes it brighter, makes it stronger, and causes midas hadin to be misgaber. That's the way Hashem created the world. Especially if Bilaam, who knew the time that Hashem gets angry, curses at that moment. So even if Klal Yisrael did not deserve at this moment to be punished, because Hashem in His midas chesed and midas rachmim gave us time to do tshuva, but if Bilaam would have cursed us, especially in the time that Hashem got angry, we would have been lost. But the truth is, but the truth is, if he has no avera, let's say then the klala would not help at all. So the Hachaim teaches a very fundamental yesod. Number one, if a person does not have any avera, no curse can affect him. It's not going to make a difference. If a person has an avera, so normally Hashem is arach apim. He waits for the person to do tshuva. He waits for the time that Hashem knows when it's time to mete out the punishment. But if somebody curses this individual who did an avera, all of a sudden the dinim will reawaken. Hashem will not punish the person. It's true that Hashem originally was going to give him longer. The curse makes the mishpat even greater, especially in a zman where Hashem is angry, right? Lahavdil, when you did something wrong, the parents will forgive you. But if the parents are annoyed about something and then you did something wrong, there's less of a leash that the parents give. So here too, kaviyachol here too. However, it's very important to point out, if the person didn't do anything wrong, no curse will help at all. And now comes with some very deep and important Kabbalistic ideas. We're not going to learn word for word everything. But essentially, what Hachaim is teaching us is that when a person does an Aveira, the Aveira attaches itself to the source in Shemayim, which means as follows. Hakadosh Baruch Hu created the Torah, and through the Torah he created the world, which means the spiritual entity of the world, there's a chelik of Shabbos, there's a chelik of Tefillin, there's a chelik of not to eat chaza, there's a chelik in not to violate Shabbos. When a person does an Aveira, so that chelik of the Olamos, that's called Shabbos, the Tumah attaches itself to that Aveira. A person, for example, was supposed to put on Tefillin and Chas v'Shalom he didn't. Even if he was a shoygig, even if he was anonymous, right? Especially if he did it on purpose. So now that Aveira, that Malach, that Tumah, attaches itself in the Olam that was created, called Tefillin, called Shabbos, called Birchas HaMazon, called Lulav and Esrei, called Tzedakah, so on and so forth. And it's yoinik. It absorbs the koyach of the Kedusha in order to keep it alive. As we mentioned many times, Tumah cannot exist unless it attaches itself to Kedusha. And it's there until the person either does tshuva or he gets punished. And this, says the Hachaim, is the secret of Noisei Oven, that even though a person does an Aveira, and the Aveira attaches itself to the source in Shemayim, to the source in the Oilamos, right? Hakadosh Baruch Hu created the world. Every part of the world was created through a different mitzvah. We don't have the secrets of what part of the world was created with which mitzvah, right? But there's a famous sefer by the Mashkiach, or Moshe Wolfson Zatzal. He taught us that there are certain halachas that allowed Klal Yisrael to capture certain parts of Eretz Yisrael. And when they couldn't capture certain parts of Eretz Yisrael, they found out the reason was because they forgot, I think it was 300 halachos. And one of the tzaddikim, through his tremendous koyach of pilpul and chidushim, was able to bring back those halachos. And when he learned those halachos, and Klal Yisrael took those halachos back, they were able to now capture different parts of Eretz Yisrael. That's the idea, right? Every part of the world, every part of Torah keeps certain chelik of the world existing. When we do an Avera, we damage that spiritual part of the world, and it feeds the Tumah. And Hakadosh Baruch Hu allows the Tumah to exist, right? Even though it's an Avera. So what Bilam is now telling us, that not only did I look for in all the Olamas, if there's a place where there's Tumah that I can attach the curse, I also looked at the Shayrish, at the source, which means in this generation I did not see any Avera. So I went to the fathers, and I didn't see in that generation. I went back and forth, and that's what Bilam said, Kimirosh Tzurim Ereno. I went to the origins of Tzur. Tzur are the Avos, the rocks of Klal Yisrael. I went all the way back there to see if there's any Avera that they did that I can attach my curse to it, as we mentioned. That if there's an Avera and a person has to get punished and somebody curses them, it can have an effect. And Bilam said, I did not see anything. There was no Avera that they did that I could attach the curse to them, and nor can I get a Kadosh Baruch Hu angry. That's how the Hachaim explains. Now, what about Terach? What about Besuel? What about Lavan? So the Hachaim teaches us that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created a new entity through Avram, new neshamis that have no connection both to Terach and both to Besuel. So very good, the Hachaim, as we're skipping towards the end, that helps prior to Avram. But what about Yishmael and Esav? So the Hachaim says, that's what the Pasuk says, Hein am levadad yishkoim. Klal Yisrael stays by himself. Uvagoyim and the other nations, Esav and Yishmael, lo yischashev, they have no connection to. There's no connection to them. The Hachaim says, but very nice. You told me very good things. Hachaim says that Bilam looked at Klal Yisrael, there's no Averis. He looked at the Avos, there were no Averis. Terach is not connected in any way to the source of Klal Yisrael, so there's no problem if Terach did an Avera, if Besuel did an Avera, there's no Shaykhis. What about Esav and Yishmael? Hachaim says that we are considered separate from them. Our source in Shemayim, our neshamas that are connected to the Olamas, have no connection to Esav and Yishmael. And Memela says the Hachaim that Bilam could not find any way to curse Klal Yisrael, especially that they had no Averis, especially that Hashem was not angry anyways at them. Memela, Bilam said to Balak, I could not do anything against Klal Yisrael. And Befrat, we see from here that when a person does an Avera, that Hashem gives us opportunity to do tshuva, and we should take advantage of it. Especially we're coming soon, it's a little early, but it's never too early. The Yemei Elul is coming, the Yemei Rosh Hashanah is coming. We should already start now to preparing ourselves. And Memela, the brachas that Hakadosh Baruch Hu wants to give us should be mashpia alav. Amen.